Hey, folks. So ignore me. I'm just going to be futzing for a little bit, setting some things up. Hey, Isabel. Close this door so we don't hear that beep so much. All the people showing up. Very cool.
Can you hear me at all, Nick?
Yes, I can hear you just fine now.
Perfect.
How you doing?
Good, good. Just got the setup all ready to go last night, so ready for class today.
So how many classes do you have today?
I have 2 Zoom classes today and then one just at any time.
Uh, are most of your classes sticking to like regular lecture kind of times, or people mostly um, uh, making it kind of like, oh, I'll just record things and you can do whatever you want?
It's half and half. Half are on schedule, half are anytime. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, we're all learning stuff, so it'll be cool to sort of find out what people feel like works best, and um, obviously, if anybody, this is just Cole, but if anybody experiences something in another class, especially if it's like, oh, that's awesome, we should do that, definitely share. Um, if you know, if I guess if you run across something that just makes you cry a lot, that's less useful to share with me, but it still might be good because it might be a hole I want to step in, and you could save me from doing it. But definitely, if something makes you really happy in another class, let me know. So, and if the background is annoying, I can totally make that go away. I have mixed feelings about that, or using backgrounds at all, but whatever, right? So we can just have my cluttered room, or we can have the background, whatever makes you happy. So, do you have any questions about anything quick before we start in 4 minutes? No?
Nick.
Yes.
So, are we still doing the dojos on Tuesday at the same time?
That's my plan, tentatively at least. I don't have any reason not to. I mean, I guess it kind of depends. And again, I'll record them and post them, which is, wasn't happening before. So they'll be more available to people than the old style was. But I don't know if anybody's going to want to be there. I don't know. So I'll show up. If people show up, that's awesome. And if people are like, yeah, that's not a thing, then we'll just not do it. But for now, I'm going on, yes, it's going to happen.
Yep. Sounds good.
And a lot of people are showing up today. That's very cool. It was one of the great mysteries was like, is there going to be anybody here when I show up in the morning or not? And there's actually over half the classes here. So I consider that actually pretty cool. And if you hear an occasional beep in the background, we have a fire alarm smoke alarm that decided now was a great time to have its battery run out and go into intermittent beep to annoy you mode. And we're not rushing out to buy a new 9-volt battery. We're going to wait till we have groceries that need to be purchased anyway. And so for a while, maybe a few days, there's going to be, and it's right behind me on the other side of a door. So it's probably audible. It's certainly audible to me. I apologize. Such is the way of the world. Oh, and the TA posted grades for the chapter 5 and 8 combo assignment. Yeah, I think that's the one that he posted grades for. No, the chat was the chapter 8 assignment, I think, that he posted grades for. At least one person didn't get a grade that thought they should have gotten a grade. If you're in that boat, let me know. It's possible that they ended up in the wrong pile because there were 2 sets of assignments that needed to be graded. And yeah, they might have just ended up in the wrong pile. And we'll try to make sure we find out what happened and get it resolved. So. Okay, let us commence. Very exciting. Here is kind of the battle plan for today. This is way more organized than I normally am, but felt like it was probably important. So it's the first day of online instruction. If there are any questions about that, I would certainly be happy to answer those. If you have questions about how to use Zoom or how to use Zoom more effectively or ideas, definitely share that kind of stuff. If you're having trouble with Slack, let me know about that. If any of the videos that I'm posting don't seem to be working correctly, let me know about that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I moved so originally the chapter 9 assignment was due. Oh, and I should say, you can raise your hand, which is kind of cool because, I mean, there's like a bunch of you, so I can't see you super well. But down in the sort of the control bar, there is an option where you can raise your hand, and then that will, excuse me, I'll get a little speech bubble saying so-and-so raised their hand. So since I can't see you, you need to make sure that you either speak up, raise your hand virtually, do something to let me know that I'm just rattling on and you need me to stop or slow down or answer a question or whatever. Faculty really like to talk. It is in our nature, and without the visual feedback from the room, I think it's very likely that I will just blah, 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 talk, 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 talk. And so that's not necessarily winning. So definitely cut me off or slow me down. Also, I'll try to be aware of the time. But again, if I appear to just be like banging on past 10:20, just leave. But also you could, let me know that it's time. So we'll see how this goes. So the chapter 9 assignment was initially going to be due Friday. I moved that to Monday, so a week from today. I think that, as I said in my email, at the beginning especially, I want to slow down a little bit and make sure everybody's like able to make this work in a reasonable fashion, because there's a lot of uncertainty. If it seems to be going well, we can maybe pick up the pace some, but yeah, there's just so much we don't know. Looking for more feedback on the handwritten versus typed proof. The vote on Slack is like 4-4 last time I checked. So decidedly not decided. And so if you haven't weighed in on that, that would be a thing to do. And then actually class material. Start chapter 9 stuff, unless there are questions about chapter 8 stuff. So we'll start with trading. I'll prove a couple of theorems that use trading, 9.3a and 9.4a. There's a whole pile of theorems there, and they're all really similar. If you get what's going on with these two, you should be great there. Then a couple of exercises that are like some of the homework problems, just for some examples. And then if time allows, we'll talk about instantiation and meta-theorem 916. Those I could imagine being pushed off to Wednesday, depending on how things go here at the moment. So Does anybody have any questions at the moment?
Nick, I
Yeah.
was wondering, how do we join the Slack?
So I should have sent you an invitation to join the Slack sometime in the past. Did I also post that on? Yeah, if you go to Canvas, there is an announcement entitled "I created a Slack organization for 1302," and it has the link. I will also post the link here in this Zoom meeting. It's kind of an icky link, but in the chat for this meeting, I just posted the link. So if you click on that link and do some stuff, it'll ask you to make an account and some things like that. But it doesn't cost anything. It's pretty straightforward. You should get in. So,
Okay.
that makes sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Chapter 8 stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Is our midterm still going to be on next Friday?
So that is an unresolved question. And I think I want to like have at least a couple of days of class before we decide that. Whatever the midterm will be, it will not be just on Friday, right? What would happen, let's say it stays a week from Friday. I would hand it out probably Friday morning, probably a little before class. So I'd post a PDF on Canvas. And then you would have some time, I would guess probably until Wednesday night. So probably give you like 5 days, the weekend, a couple of class days, some chances for office hours. And then it would be due, and you would turn it in on Canvas, either again as handwritten with that you scan in or take pictures of, or if you want to type it up in some fashion, you could do that. And so then it would be due that Wednesday. I'm inclined to probably not do it that quickly, in part because I would like to have at least one assignment go out and come back using the new online universe before we do the exam. So I'm not entirely sure, but I kind of want to see how the next day or two goes before I make a final call on that. But I think it might get moved to be a little later. If anybody, especially if that creates a problem for anybody, if for some reason, you had your world was scheduled around that exam being then, let me know and we can try to deal with that. But I feel like the better part of valor would be to make it be a little later, but exactly what that means, I don't really know. That's probably not the most helpful answer to the world. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Other questions? Go, Alice.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. Anything else? Shall we run on and see what we can do as way of course stuff? Okay, so I'm gonna make a new page here and we'll talk a little bit about trading. So, oops. Need to grab my book, make sure I've got all my stuff in front of me. I really need a great big table here and I don't have one, so it's all a little crowded. So trading, trading. So the trading rules, and there's a set of trading rules for both for all and for exists. So if you remember back to chapter 3, the book introduces or, proves a bunch of theorems about or, and then introduces and using the golden rule, and then proves a bunch of theorems about and. In chapter 9, they introduce the universal quantification for all, and then they introduce and prove a bunch of theorems about that. And then they introduce there exists, which is the sort of quantification for or. And then they prove a bunch of theorems about that. And so, throwing things around. So similar in that regard. So now, before we actually get into the details here, let me make my color black. There we go. So what does this look like? I'm going to start with the tablet because then I can draw the actual for all symbol. So universal quantification uses an upside down A, and then we have one or more variables that we're quantifying over, a range, and then a body. And we're saying for all x that make R true, P is also true, okay? So we might have, for all I, 0 at most I less than 10. Well, it's true that I squared is less than 100. For everything in this range here, I squared is less than 100. So that would be a universal quantification whose value would be true. Okay, does that make sense? Questions? Okay, then, and this is the general form. I will often, especially if I'm typing, instead of writing a for all, I will actually just put an and there, because for all is just and. It's true that this is true for I equals 0, and for I equals 1, and for I equals 2, right, et cetera, up to I equals 9. So the for all means we're anding together what we're saying about all of the things in the set. So if I said everyone in the class has a nickel, I'm saying Cole has a nickel, and David has a nickel, and Abdi has a nickel, and Emma has a nickel, right? I'm anding together all those things. And so when I'm typing, because I don't have a key for all on my keyboard, I'll just use ASCII art to make an and out of that, okay? Questions? Okay. And you definitely, like, if you have questions, definitely raise your hand or, say something. So, so the trading rule, so we'll actually get the trading rule here. The first and simplest trading rule says that for all x, R, P, equivals for all x, R implies P. So we're saying that every x that makes R true makes P true is the same as every x R being true implies P is true, so that we can move, and this is why it's called trading, we can trade this R from being in the range into being in the body using an implication like this. Now, one thing that was discussed in chapter 8, but I don't know that we ever talked about it in class, when you don't have a range here, if it just goes from the vertical bar straight to the colon, implicitly, this is true here. So there's, we could write the word true right in there, but we just leave that out because true is always true, right? So actually writing the word true here wouldn't add anything in the same way that sort of this limits us to a certain set of I values. Putting true here doesn't limit us at all. Like everything makes true true. So if we don't have anything between the vertical bar and the colon, just imagine that there's the word true there. And there are some exercises where that becomes important, where you may need to actually insert the true to be able to do something that you want to be able to do. Or you'll end up with the true there, and to get it to match what's in the book, you just sort of need to eliminate the true. And you could take it as some sort of unwritten rule that if there's nothing there, you can put a true there. And if there's only a true there, you could remove it at your leisure. So this is trading. That's axiom 9.2. 9.2. And then, as I said, 9.3 and 9.4 have a pile of alternative versions of trading, all of which are basically using rules about implication from chapter 3. So we've got an implication here, and we have a bunch of rules from chapter 3 that let us rewrite this implication. And that's really what most of the stuff in 9.3 and 9.4 is about. And I'll do a couple of examples about that. But before I do that, are there any questions about what we've done so far? Are we good?
Can you go the other way, like P implies R, or?
No, that's a great question. And no, the order here matters. So we know that implication is not symmetric. So R implies P is not the same as P implies R. So we couldn't move the R in and have it be on the right-hand side. It's got to be on the left-hand side here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but is there like a rule that lets you move the P over and then use like a follow through, or is that just like non-existent?
Well, so actually we could so there is a rule, and it's actually not in the book, but it's on the all theorems PDF, that the person that wrote that calls universal double trading. Universal double trading. Which says for all x, yeah, my handwriting with this is not super awesome. Equivals for all x. And then what he does is he actually swaps these two things, but it turns out for that to work, you need to negate both of them. So that actually is a rule that lets you swap the range and the body, but for it to be true, you have to negate both the pieces. And if you think about it, that sort of makes sense. We're saying that for everybody that's in the room, or everybody that's in the room has a nickel, that's sort of saying everybody that doesn't have a nickel isn't in the room. So if there's a person that doesn't have and I'm talking about a room, like there's a physical room still, so apologies for that. Everybody that's at the meeting has a nickel. That's equivalent to saying everybody who doesn't have a nickel must not be in the meeting. And this is, you can fairly easily prove this using trading and contrapositive, which says P implies Q, equivals not Q implies not P. And that's a chapter 3 rule, chapter 361. So that would let you swap them in that way. Is that obvious? Is that sort of the kind of thing you were thinking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's about as close as you can get to doing the swap that I think you were envisioning.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Yeah. Can you just go through how it's read again? Specifically the R colon P part. How do you say that
Gotcha.
again?
So basically how to read one of these universal quantifications. So this is, here I'm gonna, and actually let me go to the typewriter here because then I can probably type faster, more accurately. So this would be read as For all x that make r true, p is true. So so this part is the for all x bit. This is the range, and this is the body. Okay. So let's see, where's my pen? Oh, whoa, that was a terrible thing to have happen. My apologies. What in the world? Decided, oh, come on. Don't do this to me. Oh, let me. Oh, come on. I lost the ability to interact with this text. Oh, there we go. I saved it. Whew. Okay, that was super weird. So I was gonna say that, well, next I'll just redraw a, oh, undo. I will just redraw a, oh, stop it. For all x r p. So this part is there. This part is there. And this part is that. And it's weird because you're sort of saying that make r true and that p is true. And that's really part of what trading tells you, is that you could just move the range into the body, and you're saying for every x, if it makes r true, then it also makes p true, so that we have just our standard implication. So everybody in the meeting has a nickel. So if you're in the meeting, then you have a nickel. Does that help at all, Cole?
That helps a lot.
Okay. And just to get ahead a little bit, because, you know, that's always fun. The next piece will be exists. And here we'll say that there is an x that makes r true and makes p true. So there's somebody that is in the meeting and has a nickel. That is a little later in the chapter, but that's how you would read one of those. Other questions?
Since there's a for all symbol and it's the same as and, why do we have the for all symbol as well?
Well, that's a great question. History, because life is complicated. The for all symbol actually goes back a long ways. Both the upside down A and the backwards E go back, I'm pretty sure, into the 1800s. And part of the reason for those particular symbols, like Y an upside down and A and Y a backwards E, is you could make them easily with movable type. So in the era when books were printed by having little pieces of metal with letters on them that people literally put in great big rows to lay out the page, we already had a capital A and they could just turn it upside down. And we already had a capital E, and turning it upside down has the effect of making it backwards, basically. And so it was a cheap way, without having to make new physical metal, they're called slugs, to get those symbols. So that was done before. So at that time, people didn't really, I mean, they knew that there was this relationship between and for all, and exists and or, but people tended to treat them as different things. And you find, if you look in a lot of math books, they're still often treated as less related than they really are. It's like for all and exists are like new things, not kind of just really a way of combining existing things. And so this notation makes it clearer that and for all are really the same thing, and exists and or are really the same thing. but because the upside down A and backwards E are so commonly used elsewhere, I think the authors of the book felt the need to include them here, just so that if you see an upside down A later on in your life, you're not like, wow, that's just bizarre. I've never seen that before. This way, you will at least have run across it and not be completely shocked. So that's basically, I think, the history there. Does that make sense?
Yep, thanks, yep.
Cool. Other questions? Going on to do an exercise. Let's do an exercise. So I'm going to do 9.3a. So I'll make a new page here. And I'm going to, I lost my annotations thing. Well, that's weird. Well, we'll just press on. So I'm sure it will reappear at some point. So I'm going to do theorem 9.3a. And the claim there is that, and this is another trading. So 9.3 and 9.4 are a pile of trading theorems that differ in how the body is handled. So this says for all x, r, p is equivalent to, for all x, bar, vertical bar, immediately colon, not r or p. Well, if you remember the other trading rule had r imply p here. Well, we know that r implies p is equivalent to not or p by 359. So this shouldn't be too big a deal to prove. So we will start by just taking the left-hand side because that matches the trading axiom 9.2. Trading. And then we'll use 9.2 because it's the only thing we've got at this point. And 9.2 says R implies P. And now, and this, we see this sort of pattern a lot where you'll do some work using chapter 9 rules or chapter 8 rules, and then you do a little stuff with chapter 3 things, and then you come back to doing things, if necessary, with chapter 8 and 9 things. In this case, we just need the chapter 3 rule and we're done. So we have 3.59, which says that R implies P is not R or P. And that matches the right-hand side, and so we're finished. And notice that this is an example that shows that we can use 3.59 or chapter 3 stuff on the pieces of a quantification. So both the range, if there's something interesting going on in the range, and the body, if there's something interesting going on in the body, both of those are manipulable with chapter 3 stuff. And that's okay. Now you have to be careful not to sort of pay attention to the colon here. Like if you had, you can't sort of assume that some rule applies to parts of the range and parts of the body. That probably won't be true if it's a chapter 3 rule. There might be chapter 9 rules that manipulate things in both the range and the body, like actually 9.2, it moves this thing from the range into the body. But chapter 3 rules would apply either to the range or the body, but not some weird combination of the two of them, if that makes sense. So questions about that theorem. It's a pretty simple one, but it gives you an idea of how things work. We good? Okay. So I'm going to then, we'll do 9.4, 9.4a, and then I'll be done with trading unless there are questions, and we'll go on and do some other examples that are a little more like the homework. Okay. So now we'll do theorem 9.4a, which is yet another trading theorem. And it says, and it's a little more complicated than what we've been looking at before. So it has a more complex range. Instead of just having R, it's got a conjunction. And then P in the body. So this says for all X that are both a Q and an R, P is true. So for everybody that's both a computer science major and a math major, they have to take something. I can't think of something that they both would have to, that would be special to both of them off the top of my head, but let's pretend. Let's say if you were both of those, you'd have to take Calc 1. I don't know. So if you have this and in the range, we can do similar to what we did before, move the R over into an implication, but the Q stays behind. So this says that we can leave the Q here and move the R into the body. And then there's a whole pile of rules because of the different ways of writing implication here. So there's the not R or P, and the 357 and 360 versions of implication. All of those have equivalent trading rules. So does any questions about the actual theorem itself before we look at a proof? Okay, proof. Now, I'm going to start with the left-hand side, but not for any particular reason. I think you could do the same thing starting with the right-hand side, and you'd be fine. So I don't know that I have a great reason for this. Now, at this point, there's not a lot we can do. We don't have any rules that speak specifically to a conjunction here. So really all we've got is the previous trading rules from 9.2 and 9.3, and they all just have a single thing here. So we're just going to have to use one of those. And I could use any one of them. Since we have an implication on the right-hand side over here, I'm going to use 9.2 because it gives us an implication, and I'm hoping that'll do a useful thing, but you know, we'll see. So 9.2 says that we can rewrite this as for all X. Now in 9.2, R moves into the body. Well, R is the whole range. So what we have here is that the whole range, in this case, Q and R, moves into the body. So a way to think about this is we were actually doing, I'll just make a note, so R gets replaced by Q and R. So if we go back to trading, it would be like 9.2, but we'd be replacing R with Q and R. And that gives us exactly this. We have Q and R in the range, and we move that whole Q and R into the body. Does that make sense? Questions about that? Okay. So then, now we're trying to get to this. So we want to bring the Q back, right? We move the Q over because we didn't have any way of moving the R over without moving the whole thing at that point. So now we've got Q and R in the body, but we want to bring Q back into the range somehow. So we want to get Q separated from this mess. in some useful way. And at the moment, the only way we have of moving something from the body into the range is trading. And so it would be cool if the Q was on the left-hand side of an implication, because then we could use 9.2 again to move the Q back into the range. Well, we could do that with shunting. Shunting lets us, and shunting is not 365. 365. Shunting gives us, for all x, Q implies R implies P. Okay. And that's potentially useful because now we can move the Q back into the range using trading again. So this, I think, is the tricky part of this theorem, is realizing that shunting is useful as a way of splitting the Q out so that you can move it around on its own. So questions about that? Okay. So I'm going to actually come up here and say that that's a quick. Oh, and I should also point out that this is another example of being able to rewrite a piece of the theorem, right? So we rewrote the body using a chapter 3 rule, and the rest of the quantification just sat around waiting for something to happen to it later on. Okay. And that's an okay thing. So then we would use 9.2 trading again. And that allows us to move the Q back into the range. And that matches our right-hand side, and we're done. So questions about that? That's actually, I think, a potentially complicated, especially the shunting step. But if you get this proof, then you're in pretty good shape. You sort of have followed the basic steps and pieces. But if you've got questions about this, this would be a great time to ask. Anything? Okay. Then I am going to nice job, Noah. I like the definition of QED. I'm going to actually stop the sharing for a second because I lost my controls on the whiteboard, and without them I can't type, and I want to type the next one. And I'm hoping that stopping the sharing and restarting it will fix that. So I wanted to have examples where I type stuff. So questions about anything before we continue? See, it's 9:53, so we're in good shape. We should be able to do an example or two. Then, hello, share. There we go, good. I have my thing back. So I'm going to do exercise 9.3, and that will illustrate a couple of important things that we want to talk about. So I'm going to make a new page, text, exercise 9.3, which is theorem 9.6. Okay. And the theorem in question says, let me make this wider, that provided, oh, and when I'm typing, I don't have the for all, I don't have the exists, I don't have equivalence, and I don't have negation. So I'm going to use tilde for negation. So that's what would normally be the vertical bar. So that would be, or not the vertical bar, this little guy here. but I don't have access to that on the keyboard. So we're gonna wing it. So provided that X doesn't occur in P, and that's an important thing that we need to talk about in a second, then for all X R colon P equivals, and I'm just going to use a double equals because I don't know. Yeah, I'll use a double equals to sort of make it clear that this is more than just a regular equal. P or for all X not R. Okay, so this definitely shows the issues with the ASCII art. We've got negation in a couple of places. I'm using the and instead of for all. So space there. And I'm using the double equals for the equivalence. So it's not a big deal, but it is a deal. And if that is sort of a deal breaker for you, then we should, be aware of that. Okay, so what's this not occurs thing? We haven't actually talked about that. So there are going to be rules that only make sense if the quantified variable doesn't appear in some part of the quantification. And so that's what this means. It means that the variable X does not appear anywhere in the expression P. So, if P was some complicated thing, like X is even and X is less than 10, well, that would have occurrences of X in it. And so you wouldn't be able to use this rule. And the reason we need these sort of things is we don't want to strand an X out here that used to be covered by the quantifier. So if the quantifier was everyone in the room has a nickel, and we pull something out where it no longer is clear who the person is that we're talking about, then things can get all broken and awful. So we have to be careful if we're moving things in and out of a quantification like happens here. It's often the case that the quantified variable cannot occur in this expression. But when that's true, and that will be true in the example, in this example and the next example, then, and there's one of the quizzes where this occurs rule, one of the quiz questions, this occurs rule plays an important role there. So it's an important thing. It comes up a fair bit, and you need to be careful to check that this thing is true before you use a rule that requires it. So we'll do that in this proof. Questions about that occurs thing? It's kind of weird. It tends to confuse people. Okay. Proof. So I'm going to start with the right-hand side because it's got some more stuff in it. It also looks a lot like the beginning of 9.5, and I'm hoping I can use that in a useful way. So because this looks very similar to the left-hand side of 9.5. 9.5, oops. Now, we're going to have to do a little substitution to make 9.5 match. And notice that 9.5 also has this exact same occurs check. So that's good, because we're already assuming that X is not in P, which allows us to use 5, because 5 needs there to not be an X in P. And we can say that's true because we've assumed it here. So what's my substitution going to look like? R is going to become true, and Q is going to be not R. So I'm going to actually write 9.5 over here in a different color so that it is clear what we're doing here. So 9.5 says P or for all X R Q equivals, make my little box wider or it's going to wrap. For all X R colon P or oops or Q. Yes, okay. So this is 9.5. So we are taking the P matches the P and matches the P and, so that part is good. For all X is good. R here matches an empty range right there. And that's why I'm saying R is true, because if we put a true in here, which we can because the range is empty, then or it's left blank. That's the same as an R here. And then Q matches the not R here. So this is why R gets to be true and Q gets to be not R. If we plug all that in here, then this matches the left-hand side, or yeah, this matches what we have, so we can rewrite it to the left-hand side. Ooh. So Noah suggested a different ASCII art for all. I will try that. That's an interesting idea, Noah. Thank you. So we'll try that right now. So we would have, so Noah's suggestion is that. So yeah, that does look kind of, I don't know what to do about backwards E, but that could be a for all. I could see that as a for all. So we would get for all X, then we get R, but R was just true, so we can just have nothing there for the range. Or you could always write true if it makes you more comfortable. And then P or Q here. So P is still P, and Q was not R. Okay. And so that gets us there. We cool? And then a lot of people are saying, liking Haley's vote that I should just handwrite the proofs. It probably is easier in some ways. So, okay, well, I'm going to finish this one typed. I appreciate the sentiment. I'm going to finish this one typed because we started it this way. And then we'll see how people feel about it. But it looks like the handwriting is winning by a lot. So that's cool to know. Okay, so then we've gotten to here. Are there questions about where we are at the moment? We good?
Yeah, so on the blue one, it has P and on the black one, it's P or. Does that?
Ooh, that's a typo on my part. Thank you. So good catch. Oh, Gerf. Okay, momentary pause. There we go. Yeah, that is definitely a bad thing and needs to be fixed. And that is one risk of the typed proofs. I think I'm more likely to make that mistake with the type. So having you catch that kind of thing definitely is important. So thank you. Other questions before we continue? Okay, so now we're trying to get to for all x rp, well, this is actually very close to, well, this is 9.3 a, just with the symmetry of or being needed to swap the order. So I could be explicit about that and say symmetry of or, which is 3.24. Symmetry of or, and I would have minus x not r or p, and now this looks exactly like 9.3a. 9.3 rating, and we'd have for all x r colon p. Boom. And now we're on the left-hand side and we win QED. Oops, can't spell. And so that proves theorem 9.6. And I did forget to say here, I meant to say, note that we know not occurs x p, so we can use 9.5. So that's important. Like, we can't just use 9.5 without checking that the occurs check holds, and we know it does because we're assuming it as a assumption for the entire proof that we're doing. So whenever you use a theorem that has an occurs check in it, make sure that you can answer the question, why do I know that the occurs check is okay and that I'm allowed to use this theorem? Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Using a previous chapter 9 rule, using chapter 3 a little tiny bit, and then using a chapter 9 rule back again, and then it gets us to where we wanted to go. So, questions about this theorem? This proof?
Can you re-explain the occurs check?
Sure. So let's see, what would be, let me come up with an example where this would be useful. Well, okay, I'm going to make a new page, and given the voting, I'm going to actually draw again instead of trying to type. So a place where these kinds of theorems often get used is when you have nesting. So let's say I have something, oops, helps if I'm in the drawing the line mode. There we go. Oh, and I don't really want to be green. Let's go to black. Move this out of the way. There we go. Okay. So let's say I have for all I, oh man, my control thing keeps wanting to crawl into the screen and get on top of things, which is annoying. For all I, say 0 at most, I less than 10. For all j, 5 at most, j less than 8. Oops, 8. Let's say I is, let's say I squared is less than 100 and j squared is less than 64. Okay. So that's going to be true for I going from 0 to 100, it's true that I squared is less than 100, and j between 5 and up to, but not including 8, j squared is going to be less than 64. Now, here, notice that there is no j in that expression. So if we think of this as like P and this is Q, there is a J here. There's not an I there, but there's a J here. But there's no I here. So we can say that it's no J here. So I can say it's true that not occurs J in I squared less than 100. Does that make sense that this variable does not appear in this expression? Is that useful?
Yes.
Okay. Then, because of that, we could use something like 9.6. Let's see, it wouldn't be 9.6. I need... what would I need to do here? Oh, actually, let me make this an or, because then I can. Oh, stop that, you evil weasel. Oh, now where'd you go? Hello. Obviously, I have not fully figured out how to get some of this stuff to work the way that I would like it to, and I apologize. There we go. Got you back. Haha. So there, if I make this an or, then I can use 9.5. So 9.5 says we have a for all with a range and a disjunction in the body. So this is going to come down here, and it's going to be equivalent to by 9.5. And I'm just rewriting this inner part. So the outer part's going to stay, I unchanged. And then because there is no J here, I needed to erase this guy. Because there's no J here, I can pull this out of this quantification. So draw, I squared less than 100 and, no, or, undo, draw, or for all j, 5 at most j less than 8, j squared less than 64. Yeah. So I've pulled, I'm going to put parens around just to make it a little easier to see. So I've pulled this out using 9.5, and I can do that because there's no j in this. If there had been a j in this, if I pull this, if I say pull this expression here out, then j would have lost its connection to the quantifier that's defining it. There'd be the question, well, which j's are less than 64 when we square them? And at the moment, we can answer that which j question by looking at this range. It's all part of this quantification. If I pulled this out of here, it would become orphaned. It wouldn't be connected to the range anymore. We wouldn't know what the quantifier was. This would just have like walked off into space and this would no longer be meaningful. But because this expression has no j's, 9.5 says, in that case, because of the occurs check, it's okay to pull this out here. And so now we'd have for all I, blah, I squared less than 100, or for all j, blah, j squared less than 64. So did that example help? Was that useful?
Yeah.
Okay. And this occurs check is a constant source of confusion. So if anybody's got questions, definitely let me know about that. Okay. Any other questions about stuff at the moment? I could start another proof, but to be honest with you, in 5 minutes, I don't think we do it justice, and we'd probably end up coming back to it later. So I think I'm going to skip it. One option that I'll ask about, since we're here, I'm going to go back to the big picture. So I have, I don't know, yeah, you can probably see that at least. Oops, oh, wow, okay, I'm gonna have to turn the background thing off. It's clearly interacting weirdly. And let's see, preferences, virtual background. Let's not have one, none, there we go. So you can see my cluttered workroom, but this will, at least the camera will not screw up. So I have written versions of the proofs that we did today, and I don't know if it would be helpful for me to scan these and post them, as well as the versions that are in. I mean, obviously, if you go back and watch the video, it'll have the versions. I think I can save the individual pages out as of the whiteboard as images and post them. So just to be clear, so there's the video, so you can always just watch the video. There are the actual images from the whiteboard screen. So literally there'll be PNGs of like this page and this page and this page with all the scribbles and everything. So that's an option. And there's the, Nick can post scans of handwritten proofs. And I can do all of those things. And whatever, people find most useful. But it would be, is there a sense of what would be, so Fira said it would be helpful. Is that the scans? And then David liked the scan proof, and Fierce liked the scan proof. So, okay, so I'll plan on scanning those and posting them as well. So I'll try to post all three. I mean, and people let me know which ones work, because if it turns out nobody's using version X, I'll stop doing it, because all of these take a little bit of time to do. But, whatever's useful, I want to try to make sure I do. So David raised his hand. Yes, David.
So is there any way that maybe you could scan them before class and then go over the scanned note over the screen? That might.
I could. I did think about that a little bit. I have mixed feelings about that, and I'm open to people. I'm open to feedback. I think the concern I have, I'm worried about going too fast. And if I have already written out the proof and it's there and I'm just going done, I could imagine flying through a lot of proofs and people being kind of checked out. Also, if I've pre-written the proof, then there's really no chance to ask for ideas or suggestions and possibly go down an unexpected road, which is, while a little terrifying, is actually one of the things that's cool when it happens in class. Now, I don't know how realistic it is to try to be interactive in this setting, but, you know, actually there's a lot of you here. I was, you know, concerned that there'd be like me and 2 of you. So first day, super happy about that. I don't know how long it'll last, but it's neat that there's actually some people around. And I might, you know, want to encourage some kind of conversation, at least occasionally, to get, you know, to not, and if I put something up, it really just closes the door to, you know, alternatives. And so that part makes me a little anxious as well. So that's why I haven't done it, but I could. Like, if that's what people think would be the most useful, we could totally do that. And, you know, that's, if I'm writing them and scanning them anyway, it's not a big deal to me whether they get posted before or after class. So.
Okay, that's good.
Other questions in the 0 minutes remaining? Okay.
With regards to the handwriting versus typing, I know in like the practice Zoom you said that perhaps typing was your method of choice, but now that we have one class period down, has your opinion changed at all?
Well, I don't care. It'll work fine for me either way. As you saw when using the whiteboard and the tablet, sometimes I lose. There's a little control bar, which I don't think you get to see, that lets me say, am I drawing a line or typing text? And that disappears. It jumps around in weird ways. My tablet and Zoom are like having an odd fight occasionally. And so you get to watch me go, where'd it go? And that's probably not lots of fun, but, and if I type, that doesn't happen. So I do think it is easy. I'm more used to handwriting and talking and thinking at the same time. And so I probably did seem more comfortable doing that. And so, but I can try to learn to do something else if that's what works for people. I assume the handwriting's harder to read, frankly, than the typing, but I don't care. The handwriting's easier for me in some ways. Like, I do get to write the correct symbols. And I don't have to like kind of remember my ASCII art as I'm going. As Cassie noted, I made a mistake in that one place where I had a and instead of an or the other way around. And I suspect that kind of thing will happen more with typing because it's sort of an odd key combination. So I will try to do what works best for you folks. You're paying the bills. So, you know, let me know what you think is best and I will try to make it happen. But
I think even though the writing is a little bit messier, it's easier to follow. And I like to have the correct like syntax because it's confusing to me if it's in the typed format.
I totally understand that. And that the handwriting also, I think the timing, the spacing, the rhythm, that's I think the word I'm looking for. The rhythm is a little better with the handwriting. Again, it matches what I'm used to doing on the board. So, yeah. Okay, so people are beginning to leave probably because they have other things to do in their life and class technically ended 3 minutes ago. I mean, I can still be here. I don't have any place, well, I've got another class to get ready for, but it's mostly sorted out. So is there anything else that people have or should we wrap it up? And I'll see some of you tomorrow night and most of you Wednesday morning again. Oh, and definitely use the sign up slots, appointment slots. I posted a link to all of that everywhere for office hours. So just grab a half hour that's free and we'll set up a Zoom thing, which again, if you want, I can record and share back with you. So if you want a recording of the office hours meeting, I can make that available. So. Cool. Okay. We're out of here. Thank you all very much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.